and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. Darren, I am excited today to talk about fixing soil pH problems. It's one of the things that we've worked on our farm. Not that many years ago, we had a lot of soils that were very low in pH. We had a bunch of soils very high in pH, and we have gotten a lot more of those, much closer to 7 now, and our yields have gone up dramatically. We're going to talk about that today.
I know one of the things that's fun, Brian, is we get emails from all over the country saying, hey, why don't you guys talk about this? Why don't you focus on this in your show? And the biggest thing that we had from this summer was, how can I drought-proof my crop? What can I do to make my crop do a better job next year, even if we're dry again? We'll share some tips about drought-proofing your crop.
Well, another comment we've gotten from around the country is, how do we control this week's weed of the week? This is a tough one. It's been showing up more all over the country, and we're going to focus on that today. But first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we want to talk about how do you keep bugs out of your house.
I absolutely love fall. That's my favorite season.
I thought you were going to say you love bugs, Darren.
No, well, I do love bugs, just not in my house. And you know, one of the worst things about fall is we've got box elder bugs, we've got lady beetles, we even have some ants that are trying to get into the house. We got crickets out in the yard keeping me up at night when I open my windows. I don't want those bugs around, Brian. I just want some peace around my home.
Yep, so a lot of people get really nervous about pesticides. Darren and I were over in Europe this summer, and of course, in Europe, boy, it is a terrible word to say pesticide, but you know, well, I'm talking to people all the time about a lot of the products that are coming out now. If they're not natural products, they're derived from a natural product. So for example, what I spray around my house and lawn and even inside the house is a product called Tempo. It's a pyrethroid insecticide, and the pyrethroids come from the poison found in the chrysanthemum flower. It's like sprinkling a flower all around my house. I mean, is it possible somebody could be allergic to that flower? It's possible, but it's never gonna kill anybody. It's not that harmful.
Well, what I'll do with Tempo is not only will I spray it around the outside edge of my house, I'll spray it right along my door sills, I'll spray it underneath my windows, I'll spray it right along the base of my house and in my landscaping. I'll also just spray my whole yard. One of the things that bugs me the most is crickets, Brian. I just can't stand the sound of them. I don't like them getting in my garage or in my basement. I'll spray my whole yard for them. And what I found is it also keeps down mosquitoes and some of the other pesky bugs that can be out there in the fall and ruin some really nice nights out in the autumn.
Since you mentioned mosquitoes, and this is one of the big things that we try to focus on when we're talking about pesticides is there some risk? Yeah, there's a tiny amount of risk. I mean, somebody's pot could possibly be allergic to something, you might break out a little bit. The odds of that are slim, but it could happen. But the other side of it is we've got harmful diseases that we could get. So the mosquitoes, they carry West Nile in some cases. There are people that have died from that, okay? You're not gonna die from spraying a pyrethroid. You could die from mosquito bites though.
Well, one other thing is ticks. When we get ticks, when we're out in our grassy areas or out in our tree belts, this kind of thing, my dog will pick up ticks, my kids occasionally have a tick on them. But we don't wanna have ticks out there because again, you can have a harmful disease like Lyme disease get into you or your pet. And you don't wanna see those things. You can stop them very easily.
Yep, back when we used to have livestock on the farm, Darren and I had to do hog chores every day, morning and night, every day. And one of the big things that our dad was focused on is making sure that anywhere where the hogs were, it was relatively clean, especially with cobwebs and spiders, because he just said if you have cobwebs and spiders all over the place, you absolutely are going to have more disease in the hogs. Now, I don't know, what diseases that's going to be, but all I know is I think about it all the time, even in my house. I see cobwebs and spiders, and I want those things gone right away. Well, when you're spraying Tempo, you're going to have a lot fewer spiders around because, again, it's going to control spiders, ants, crickets, grasshoppers, I mean, a whole host of insects, and it is labeled to spray in and around homes.
Well, let's just look at the cost side of this, because you may be saying, yeah, those things bother me, but it's not worth a whole bunch of money to take care of them or a whole bunch of time to do it. Frankly, it takes me about 15 minutes to spray my yard and around the house for bugs. It really doesn't take very long. Now, if you say, well, I've got a 10-acre acreage, I don't think you probably need to spray the whole 10 acres, but maybe you spray an acre or two right around your house just to keep the bugs away. Either way, the cost is pretty low. For a house in town, you're going to spend $5, maybe even less, to control all your bugs, and you're going to get residual control for probably a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and so we do suggest spraying at least once a month, maybe even every 2 to 3 weeks if you have a lot of bugs around your house. And you can just see the higher rate that you use, the more residual you're going to have. So it's kind of this trial and error thing that you'll figure out in time. But the main thing is, we just want to stress to you, there is a way to stop those bugs from getting into your house. You can spray a product like Tempo, relatively safe to human beings, but it's very lethal to a lot of bugs.
Well, unfortunately, Tempo doesn't do a thing for our Weed of the Week, but we'll show you what does coming up later in the show.
Hey everybody, I'm Steve Azar, singer, songwriter, and recording artist. My good friend Brad Swenson, owner of Swenson Investments and Commodities, has a great team that helps farmers and ranchers with farm estate plans.
Our goal is to help you avoid or minimize federal estate tax. We work with you, your attorney, banker, and advisors.
Preserve your wealth and pass the family farm down to the next generation. Call my good friends at Swenson Investments and Commodities.
For lower costs and higher production, Mandaco leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Twister's ease of maintenance is forgiving in rocks and has contour conformity equaling 0 downtime. Our hydraulically adjusted coulter angles make residue management easier and less costly. Spring or fall, the Mandaco Twister vertical tillage unit is the new leader. See your Mandaco dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call 877-915-8790.
For years, FarmLogic has been the easiest and most convenient way to keep up with your farming operations. Well, it just got better. Introducing FarmPad for your phone. You always have your phone with you, so entering records as they happen is as easy as a touch of a button. Chemical database, GPS, service records, and more. When you do it on the farm, save it on your phone and it's backed up forever. Call or visit farmlogic.com for a free trial and find out why FarmLogic is the best decision tool for the farm.
Case IH set the standard for improving power and fuel economy with SCR technology, while others were still trying to decide what the standard was. Only efficient power from Case IH is proven in the field 10,000 times over. And you'll find it in all our high horsepower equipment, from tractors to combines to sprayers. The world of farming is changing. Will you be ready?
I'm ready.
To learn more about how you can be ready with the proven leader, visit caseih.com/efficient-power.
Back in 1966, Advanced Drainage Systems, Inc. was the first company to start manufacturing plastic agricultural drainage pipe in the United States. And today, ADS continues our leadership with superior pipe production and service capabilities. Our roots are firmly entrenched in the agriculture industry, and we're committed to helping farmers grow their business. With 54 manufacturing plants and 24 distribution yards throughout the world, you can count on ADS and our green striped pipe to be there when you need us. Advanced Drainage Systems, the green striped pipe you can count on.
One of the most important things you can do on your farm is fix your soil pH. And I hear it all the time from people all over the country. Well, I've got high pH soil and there's nothing I can do about it. That's dead wrong. You absolutely can do something about high soil pH, and you can easily fix low soil pH too, but we want to talk about how to keep your soil from going back to that low pH again as well. So Darren, let's get into how do we fix soil pH?
Well, when you think about soil pH, I hear it from a lot of people, oh, I don't know, there's nothing I can really do about this. What they're really saying is, there's no quick fix. There's nothing that I could just add and it's all better. It's going to be a long-term process, whether we're talking about high pH or even low pH. Guys that think, oh, here's the quick fix. Well, yes, you can do the right thing right now, but the impacts of that may not be felt for a couple of cropping seasons. So don't think, oh, I'm going to have this quick fix about soil pH, because frankly, it didn't go bad in a real hurry either. It probably took 10 or 20 years or even more, who knows. But you can't just fix these problems overnight. So let's look at each one, talk about how long it's going to take and what the right steps to do right now.
All right, let's start with low pH soil. That one, in my opinion, is a lot easier to fix than the high side. So with a low pH, let's first give the example of, all right, 5 pH, and let's say we want to get it closer to 7. 7 is about the ideal pH, that's neutral. Depending on the crop you're raising, the ideal soil might be 6.8, it might be 7, might be 6.5, somewhere in there. We know it's got to be close to 7 though. That's what we're shooting for. But just understand the pH scale first. It's logarithmic. So in other words, 7's neutral, 6 is acid, and it's 10 times more acid than a 7. Okay, a 5 pH is 10 times more acid than a 6. But you have to take 10 times 10 to get to a 7. So in other words, A 5 is 100 times more acid than a 7. 100 times. And I'll go all the way down to 4. A 4 is 1,000 times more acid than a 7. A lot of people talk about Brazil and, oh, it's great to farm in Brazil and they get all kinds of rain and heat. Yep, they do, but they start out with a 4 pH soil. It's 1,000 times more acidic than a 7, and that's why they can't raise soybeans there very economically, because they're spending all this money on lime and trying to fix the soil. Well, anyway, you can put lime out there, and when you do, what that lime is, it's calcium carbonate. When you put the lime in the soil, all it's going to do is it's going to remove that excess hydrogen, the acid basically, and you're going to be left with water and carbon dioxide and some free calcium. Okay, that's it. So it's a pretty simple process. There's nothing negative about it, but it's going to take time to get that done. So you put a bunch of lime out there, probably over a period of years, and I can take a 5 pH to a 7 pH probably in 5 or 6 years. It's not that tough.
Well, it sounds pretty easy when you bring it up that way, Brand, but there's 2 other problems that you haven't addressed. One of them is compaction. Let's say that you've got a field that, hey, you've got a real hard compaction layer at about 8 inches of depth. What we end up with is when we're raising nice crop above it, we have all kinds of roots, right? Well, they can only get down 8 inches. So the roots are just thoroughly filling up that top 8 inches of soil, and what they're doing is releasing organic acids, trying to make nutrients available. So you've got all that acid combined in just 8 inches of soil, and you end up with pHs that drop.
And then to make it even worse, if you start raising corn on corn and you say, well, I'm only raising 200, but I want 350, so I'm going to put 350 pounds of nitrogen out. You got all this excess nitrogen out there, and that can also lower the pH. So these are things that you don't want to do. I mean, we don't want to overdo stuff. We've got to keep our soil relatively in balance. Darren and I talk a lot about organic farming, and just that there are some principles with organic farming that we want to take out. And one of the biggest principles with organic farming is we want to have just about everything in balance. We want fertility in balance. We want our soil pH to be in balance as we go through the soil. We don't want to put on too much or too little of anything, and it's hard to do, but the better you can do that with conventional farming methods, the better overall crop you're going to raise.
Well, one other challenge, Brian, when we talk about low pH is if you're in no-till and you say, well, I'm going to put a bunch of lime on, but I can't do any tillage to work it in.
Yep.
Well, you've got to address those problems a little bit sooner, because you're going to have to rely on rainfall to move that lime down through the soil profile. So if you're in no-till, don't wait till your pH gets down to 5 or anything like that. If you start seeing it drop and you get down to 6.2 or 6.3 already, you say, wow, I'm a full half a point below where I want to be on my pH. I better get after this right away. So I'm going to put it out in the fall, so hopefully I get some snow melt to work it down in and everything else. But in no-till, get after the problem sooner.
Ideally, what we want is a pH in the range of 6.3 to 7.3, about a half point on either side of 6.8, which is considered ideal for corn, soybeans, and wheat. So 6.3 to 7.3. If it's outside of that range, we want to fix it. So again, if it's lower than 6.3, we want a lime. We want to make sure we've addressed our compaction. And probably the other big thing with all this soil pH and trying to raise that up is how much lime do I put out? I don't know. Run a soil test, have the soils lab people tell you what's going on, and it's not that difficult. But what they'll do is they'll take a measurement called buffer pH. It's not just pH, it's buffer pH, and that's going to tell the lab people how quickly and how much lime you need for your ground. All right, Darren, it's easy to start talking about a whole bunch of stuff, but we got to talk about how do we fix high soil pH. It's not that difficult to do, it just takes time. You need to address drainage. And on our farm, what that's meant is putting tile in the ground. We've taken 8.5 pHs down to 7.5 over a period of 10 years by tiling. Now, we also are doing some experimenting starting this fall with elemental sulfur. Now, we already know if you put enough elemental sulfur on, you can drop an 8.5 pH to a 7, just bam, instantly it's done. Now, it'll come back and go up again over time. Elemental sulfur is a short-term fix. But the point is, if you wanted that pH down, immediately you could do it.
One other thing you want to look at if you're doing some irrigation, look at the quality of that water. If you're adding more salt or a high pH water source, you can treat that water before it's applied out into the field and make a difference.
You mentioned salt, and that's the reason why we have so many high pH areas in a lot of the upper Midwest where we have drainage issues. Over time, the water can't drain like normal. The salts start coming up. As water evaporates, it leaves salt behind, and it ends up killing your ground eventually. The good news is salt is leachable. You just have to improve your drainage. You can lower the salt levels. You'll lower the pH levels over time. It's a good thing. You've got to get it done.
Now, one last thing, Brian. We farm in the hills, and we've got some fields, you know what, over 100 years of tillage, there's been some erosion off the tops of the hills, and we're down to the subsoil in some cases. If you're in those situations and you've got some high pH spots, I know I have some on my ground. You've got to try and build new soil. And guys will say, oh, you can't build new soil, it'll take thousands of years. Wrong answer. You can do it with manure, you can do it with fertility, you can do it with tillage systems. You do less tillage, you leave more residue out there. You can use cover crops in those situations. There's many things that you can do. Don't give up on any of these problems. Just start making the right steps now and focus on it on your farm. It will make a big time return on investment for you.
Whether you have high pH or low pH, you're probably going to have our Weed of the Week somewhere on your farm. We'll talk about how to stop it coming up later in the show.
Why do more farmers choose Genuity VT Double Pro Rib Complete Corn Blend? For maximum yield protection. With 2 powerful ways to control above ground insects like corn earworm, corn borer, and fall armyworm. Plus convenient refuge in a bag with 95% traded seed and 5% refuge seed. That's simplicity. That's Genuity VT Double Pro Rib Complete Corn, the #1 choice of farmers.
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more. Quick Roots is applied to the seeds so the live microorganisms go right to work, enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients, including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your local dealer and get your Quick Roots today.
Speed, strength, and efficiency make Capello corn heads a head above the rest. Built with polymer components that exceed industry standards, Capello corn heads continue to push the boundaries for maximizing grain retention while using less energy. Visit CapelloUSA.com and learn more about Capello's state-of-the-art chopping technology that cuts cleaner, allowing your horsepower to remain where it belongs, with your combine, so you can harvest faster in all weather conditions. Add to that an amazing folding feature, and it's clear to see why Capello is a head above the rest.
Over the generations, fertilizer, the unsung hero of the farm, has been in the background, quietly nourishing crops with very little fanfare. Until now. Meet the next generation of fertilizer. Micro Essentials.
Everything is better to the power of Nutrisphere N. Proven to shield against leaching, volatilization, and denitrification, Nutrisphere N Nitrogen Fertilizer Manager helps you maximize the efficiency of your nitrogen applications. In fact, research shows that in 184 corn trials, Nutrisphere N increases yields by an average of 13.2 bushels per acre. Do the math for yourself. Contact your local fertilizer dealer today and take your operation to the power of Nutrisphere N.
Well, Darren, the topic of the year is drought-proofing next year's crop. What can we do this fall so we're less susceptible to drought next year?
Well, we put in irrigation pivots on all our fields, Brian. That's pretty much it. Then we can just add more water. Oh, that would be an easy answer, wouldn't it? If it didn't cost a lot of money and if we didn't have issues with getting a water source.
Yeah, but you know what?
Fields.
Seriously, that's something that a lot of farmers need to consider. So you've got to run these numbers. You know, commodity prices are a whole different than they used to be, and you might have run the numbers 10 years ago, but you need to look at it again because now you've got more yield potential and a lot more dollars per acre that you could potentially bring in to pay off that irrigation system.
All right, well, you say that, Brian, but here's one thing that I think about. You know, we had fields right across the road from each other this year. That one field looked good, and the field right across the road, probably a fairly similar soil type, looked terrible and suffered from drought much earlier. So there are certainly management practices you can do without irrigation that you can certainly help your crop get by a lot longer in low moisture situations.
So here are the first things that I think about. Reducing tillage. We do a lot of strip till on our farm. We could absolutely see the difference there versus our conventional till stuff. Another big thing is having roots going down deep. In order to do that on our farm, in some cases, we've got to have tile in the ground so we keep our water table low. If the water table's high, it's going to cut your roots off early in the year. So tiling is something we're going to be working on this fall too, and I see it going on all over the country. Fertility, not just fertility in general. I like having fertility down deep in the ground because it's nice when you can get your roots deep, but you've got to have some plant nutrients down deep too. You'll have water down. I mean, even on our farm, we'd gone 2 months without rain this summer. We dug a hole, dug a root pit for our big field day this summer. I mean, it's 100 degrees out and we had water down at about 3 feet. I mean, not lots, but there was water down there. Well, if you don't have any fertility down there, that water's not going to do you as much good.
When you talk about water and fertility, Brand, it just brings me to the point you need to build organic matter levels in your soil. And that's one thing that I'm really focusing on my ground. I want to build my organic matter levels up because for each 1% increase in organic matter, your soil can hold 4% more water. That's a big deal, especially on a year like this. And plus that organic matter holds nutrients, soil microbes, all those things are good about organic matter. The other thing is planting date. Instead of waiting until, a week or 2 weeks after everybody else is getting started, be one of those early guys that gets out there. I'm not saying that you want to plant your soybeans in February or something like that, but maybe err towards the early side on some of your acres at least. By planting a little bit earlier, you can close off those rows quicker before it gets real
What
hot.
this all comes back to is something that our dad said years ago. He said, rain corrects your mistakes. He originally farmed in Iowa, then moved to South Dakota where he got about 30% less rainfall. And he just said, boy, in Iowa, I could make mistakes with many of these different things that we've just talked about. But he said, when I came to South Dakota, I had to be a much better farmer. I had to be very particular because quite often we had dry conditions. Just a few years ago on our farm, we went 3 months with no rain. This year we went 2 months with no rain, and it really shows up. I mean, we still make mistakes today, but we're trying to minimize those mistakes, trying to make these corrections so we can drought-proof our future crops.
One of the important things on drought-proofing crop is weed control. We'll show you how to stop this week's Weed of the Week.
Hefty Seed Company is proud to sponsor today's Weed of the Week. At Hefty's, you'll always get a great price and solid agronomy information.
We're Hefties, and we're big on the farm.
Our Weed of the Week is Biennial Wormwood Sage. Because it's a biennial plant, a lot of times we're dealing with a different type of plant in year 1 versus year 2. Are there any differences in how we're going to stop it?
You have to get after it early. What I like to do is get out there with a fall treatment, and this fall is going to provide us a great opportunity because we've got an early harvest going across the country.
Yeah, so probably the biggest thing is I like killing it at the end of year, well really I like killing it as soon as I see it, but I'm just saying it's relatively easy to kill at the end of year 1 because you can go out in the fall, you can go with a high rate of 2,4-D or Banville, and you don't have a lot of worries. You don't have worries with carryover, you don't have worries that you're not going to kill this thing. You can absolutely hammer it in the fall.
Well, as I mentioned, it's pulling nutrients down into the root system to be able to do that bolt stage in year 2. So if you can spray it before your first hard killing frost, you can pull more of that herbicide down as it's storing up nutrients to survive the winter, and you get a much better kill.
Okay, in the spring, we have the most problem with Biennial Sage in soybeans because in corn, it's easy to control with status especially, or even Banville. But in front of soybeans, it's a tough one. What I've had guys do over the years where they've had pretty good success is use some Sencor combined with something else, maybe Sencor plus Sharpen or Sencor plus Authority, like in the mix of Authority MTZ. You need a couple of methods to get this under control. Now certainly tillage will do a pretty good job too, but you've got to get out there relatively early with that tillage. If the plant gets really up and growing, then all you do a lot of times is kink that stem over.
And of course a high rate of glyphosate is going to be recommended with all of these applications in the fall or in the spring. You'll do a nice job controlling biennial wormwood sage.
Well, that's it for our Weed of the Week, but stay tuned. Iron Talk is coming up next.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
The world of farming is changing. From the power and versatility of Steiger and Magnum tractors to the legendary reliability of axial flow combines, Case IH can help you be ready. To learn more, visit caseih.com/be ready.
Across the country, there are a lot of people moving away from as much field cultivator use and even really some disc use and switching to different types of coulter carts. We're going to talk about one of the main differences you need to watch for in today's Iron Talk. When we talk about coulter carts, many people refer to it as vertical tillage because we have coulters that are running up and down and they're trying to do some tillage into the soil. Most of the time we're running really fast through the field and we're only going just a couple of inches deep, but you certainly could go deeper with these vertical tillage type tools. One difference that I've seen in many fields across the country this summer is when we're doing vertical tillage with a straight gang machine, many times where those gangs of coulters run, there's a hard ridge that's a little higher in the soil in between the coulters. And then where the coulter ran, there's a little bit of a dip. And we've seen uneven planting depth following many of the coulter carts that are out in the market today. Now I know most people are looking at above ground. What do you see? Well, you see chopped up residue, you see soil that's kind of flipped up and getting better contact on that residue. There's a lot of good things that those coulter carts are doing. What you want to do though is after you run a coulter cart across the field for a little ways, just get out of that tractor and scrape across the soil. Just dig in for a few inches or have one of your kids dig behind you just to see, what your seed bed looks like underneath. If you've got 1.5 inches of fluff or 2 inches of fluff and underneath you have some hard ridges, you're going to have some problems with seed depth next year. There are a few good machines out in the industry. We've been happy with the new 330 that Case has got. It's done a nice job having a level bed so we have even seed emergence in the spring. The other thing to watch for though too, with any of these machines, if you've got wings, so you're doing a large tillage pass or a wide tillage pass, not only do you want to scrape a little bit and see where the floor of your tillage is right behind the implement, you also want to do it out on the wings to make sure those wings aren't riding up. So do be cautious when you're out there with different coulter carts that you're not creating an uneven bed so you're going to have seed emergence problems next spring. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show. Not a weed.
Hi!
It's our agriculture liquid sales professional. Brian's never really liked salesmen.
But I like him.
I heard you talking about testing products to make sure they work. You know, Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers does more research to prove our products than any other fertilizer company.
Yeah, I've seen your reports. There's a ton of proof.
We've been to the North Central Research Station. We've seen AgroLiquid's 500-acre proving ground up close and personal.
We know that when we use agriculture liquid fertilizers, it's like having all that research on our farm.
It's like having Dr. Jerry and the team right here in your field.
Dr. Who?
Find out how Dr. Jerry and his team can help you increase yields at www.farmguytv.com.
Hey, we have field days at the North Central Research Station in late summer. You're all invited.
Harvest season will soon be over, but don't put away your equipment until you bring it into Titan Machinery, your Case IH dealer. Take advantage of our Uptime Maintenance program. Uptime is Titan's preventative maintenance service designed to eliminate costly downtime during the short working season. Our technicians average more than 10 years of experience and use a comprehensive checklist to find problems before they slow you down. Call Titan Machinery today to schedule your Uptime service so you can spend the winter worry-free. Titan Machinery and Case IH. Better solutions.
Hey everybody, I'm Steve Azar, singer, songwriter, and recording artist. My good friend Brad Swenson, owner of Swenson Investments and Commodities, has a great team that helps farmers and ranchers with farm estate plans.
Our goal is to help you avoid or minimize federal estate tax. We work with you, your attorney, banker, and advisors.
Preserve your wealth and pass the family farm down to the next generation. Call my good friends at Swenson Investments and Commodities.
Case IH set the standard for improving power and fuel economy with SCR technology, while others were still trying to decide what the standard was. Only efficient power from Case IH is proven in the field 10,000 times over. And you'll find it in all our high horsepower equipment, from tractors to combines to sprayers. The world of farming is changing. Will you be ready?
I'm ready.
To learn more about how you can be ready with a proven leader, visit caseih.com/efficientpower.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
Introducing the all-new Backsaver Swing Hopper Auger Mover. Backsavers have interchangeable parts which allows you easy access to move or swing your augers to fit your harvesting needs. Get yours today at Norwood Sales.
That's all the time we have for this week's show, but be sure to tune in again next time for a Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
Why are many farmers reducing tillage? Reduced tillage has shown to increase soil's organic matter levels, reduce erosion potential, improve soil structure, and increase microbial activity and soil life. For more information, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.